Elena Vasquez had been sitting at the downtown bus stop for what felt like an eternity, though in reality it had only been 2 hours. Her gloved hands were jammed into the pockets of her thin coat, her breath escaping in pale clouds that dissolved into the biting December air. The city moved around her in hurried fragments, businessmen clutching briefcases, women balancing paper cups of coffee, delivery trucks rumbling over icy streets. Everyone seemed to have a place to be, a door waiting to open for them, a warm destination beyond the cold. Everyone but her. At 28, Elena had once believed her life was neatly mapped out, as if she were following a clear trail laid down just for her. She had worked steadily, saved carefully, and trusted deeply in the man she thought she would marry. But 3 weeks earlier, the neat trail had collapsed beneath her feet. She had discovered that her fiancé, her partner, the man she thought she could depend on, had been siphoning money from their joint savings account, not for bills or an emergency, but for a secret gambling habit that had eaten away at years of effort until there was almost nothing left. The betrayal had gutted her. It wasn't just about the money, though that loss was devastating enough to push her into debt. It was about the foundation of trust that had been shattered so completely, leaving her with nothing solid to stand on. She had walked out that night and hadn't looked back. But walking away didn't mean walking towards something better. In the weeks that followed, the apartment was gone, her belongings sold or abandoned, her savings vanished. What remained was a woman sitting on a cold metal bench in December with just 17 crumpled dollars in her wallet and no place that could reasonably be called home. The homeless shelter had been overflowing the night before, every cot and mat claimed before she even arrived. She had ended up walking until dawn, the streetlights her only companions, the sound of her own footsteps a reminder that she had nowhere else to go. By morning her legs ached, her eyes burned, and the heavy weight of hopelessness pressed against her chest. That was when she noticed the little girl. At first Elena thought she was mistaken. Children didn't sit at bus stops alone, especially not in weather like this. But the girl was unmistakably by herself. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old, bundled tightly into a pale pink winter coat that looked expensive but too big, the sleeves swallowing her small arms. A gray knit hat framed a face with dark hair tucked neatly inside and wide, luminous eyes that seemed to notice everything, even the smallest details of the bustling street. Elena's first reaction was a jolt of concern, followed quickly by disbelief. Where were her parents? Why was she sitting alone? She glanced up and down the sidewalk, expecting to see a frantic mother rushing back. But there was no one. "Excuse me, sweetie," Elena said softly, leaning closer but careful not to startle her. "Are you waiting for someone?" The child looked up, her serious expression breaking instantly into a smile that felt too pure for such a gray, cold morning. "Yes," she answered with the crisp diction of a child taught to speak carefully. "I'm waiting for my daddy. He's coming to get me." Relief washed through Elena, but it was tangled with unease. "Where's your daddy now?" she asked gently. The little girl lifted her mittened hand and pointed toward the tall glass towers that dominated the skyline nearby. "He's working in one of those big buildings," she explained. "He said to wait right here, and he would come and get me." Elena frowned inwardly. Leaving a child this young alone at a bus stop, no matter how briefly, seemed reckless at best. But she forced her worry down, not wanting to alarm the child. "What's your name?" "Sophie," she said brightly. "Sophie Chun. I'm 4 years old. What's your name?" "Elena," she replied softly. "Elena Vasquez." Sophie tilted her head, studying Elena with the unguarded curiosity of a child who had not yet learned to censor her thoughts. "It's very nice to meet you. Elena, you look sad." The observation hit harder than Elena expected. Her throat tightened, her body betraying emotions she had tried to keep hidden beneath layers of pride and silence. "Yes," she admitted quietly after a pause. "I suppose I am waiting for someone, too, but I'm not sure they're coming." Sophie considered this with solemn eyes, then scooted a little closer on the bench. The snow had begun to fall in soft flakes, landing in her hair and on the curve of her knit hat. But she didn't seem to notice. She launched instead into a lively description of her favorite things, the pictures she liked to draw, the bedtime stories her daddy read to her, the grand tea party she hosted for her stuffed animals who always dressed properly for the occasion. Listening, Elena found herself pulled away from her own despair. Sophie's chatter carried a warmth that seeped past the cold layers of Elena's loneliness. It was as though this little girl's words were tiny sparks, lighting up corners of her heart that had gone dark. Then Sophie paused, peering up with the seriousness of someone delivering a royal decree. "You're very pretty," she announced suddenly, "like a princess in my storybooks." Despite everything, despite the hunger gnawing at her stomach and the uncertainty pressing down on her, Elena smiled. "Thank you, Sophie. That's very kind of you." The child edged closer still, her voice dropping to an almost conspiratorial whisper. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Sophie leaned forward, her eyes wide with the importance of her question. "Can you be my mommy?" The word struck Elena like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She blinked, struggling to recover her composure. "Oh, sweetie," she said gently, her voice trembling. "I can't be your mommy. You already have a mommy, and your daddy is coming to get you." Sophie shook her head with the calm certainty of a truth she had lived with. "I don't have a mommy anymore," she said simply. "She went to heaven last year. Daddy says she's watching over me, but I can't see her." Elena's heart twisted painfully. "I'm so sorry, Sophie," she whispered. "That must make you very sad sometimes." "Sometimes," Sophie admitted, her tone matter-of-fact. Then, after a pause, she added, "But I think you would be a good mommy, because you have kind eyes." Tears welled in Elena's vision, spilling before she could stop them. The innocent honesty of this little girl, this stranger, broke something open inside her. "Can I tell you a secret?" Sophie asked, her small hands clutching at her coat buttons. Elena nodded. "Sometimes I wish for a mommy when I blow out my birthday candles. And when I saw you sitting here looking sad, I thought maybe you were wishing for something, too." Elena swallowed hard, her voice low and trembling. "You're right," she admitted. "I was wishing for a family. Someone to love, and someone to love me back." Sophie's eyes widened with delight. "That's exactly what I was wishing for, too. Maybe we wish for each other." Before Elena could respond, a man's voice pierced the snowfall, urgent and relieved all at once. "Sophie! Thank God, Sophie!" Elena turned to see a man sprinting toward them. He wore an expensive dark coat, his polished shoes slipping slightly on the icy pavement. His face was etched with panic. But as soon as his eyes fell on Sophie, it melted into overwhelming relief. "Daddy!" Sophie cried happily, scrambling down from a bench. "I made a new friend. This is Elena, and she was wishing for the same thing I was." The man reached him and dropped to one knee beside Sophie, gathering her into his arms with force that spoke of both fear and relief. He held her tightly, pressing his cheek against her hat, as though needing proof she was real, safe, whole. "Sophie, you scare me so much," he murmured, his voice breaking just slightly. "When Mrs. Chun said you wandered away from the building lobby, I thought—" He stopped, shaking his head as if unwilling to finish the sentence. "I'm sorry, Daddy," Sophie said, her small hands patting his shoulder in consolation. "But I saw the snow and wanted to look at it. And then I met Elena, and we had a very important conversation." Only then did he glance up at the woman sitting on the bench, her posture uncertain, her hands clasped in her lap. His eyes softened instantly. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "Thank you for staying with her." "Elena Vasquez," she replied quietly, offering her name like a fragile token. "David Chun." He introduced himself, standing now and adjusting his coat. He had the air of someone in his late 30s, his hair dark, his features strong but weary in a way that suggested both professional responsibility and personal weight. "I was just waiting for the bus when Sophie came over," Elena explained. She's a remarkable little girl." "Daddy," Sophie interrupted, tugging his hand insistently. "Elena was wishing for a family, just like me. Maybe we can help each other." David blinked, momentarily at a loss. He looked between his daughter's bright, earnest face and the young woman sitting with snow dusting her hair, and something in his expression shifted from formality to quiet curiosity. He studied Elena more carefully now, noting the thinness of her coat, the tired lines around her eyes, the way she seemed both embarrassed and exposed under his gaze. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "Do you need help getting somewhere?" Elena hesitated. Pride warred with desperation inside her chest. She wanted to say she was fine, to stand and walk away before the weight of her circumstances became visible. But Sophie's wide, trusting eyes made it impossible to lie. "I'm between situations right now," she said carefully. David's brow furrowed. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" Her silence was answer enough. "Daddy," Sophie said firmly, in the tone of someone used to being listened to, "Elena should come home with us. She doesn't have anywhere to go, and we have lots of room." Elena's eyes widened in alarm. "Oh, no, I couldn't possibly." But David surprised her. His expression was thoughtful, not dismissive. "You spent time with my daughter instead of walking away. That tells me quite a lot about who you are." He paused, then added, "Would you consider having dinner with us tonight? No expectations. Just a meal and warmth." Elena's lips parted in protest, but Sophie clutched her hand with small, insistent fingers. "Please, Elena, you wouldn't be imposing. You'd be helping. We need someone who understands about wishing for families." Something inside Elena cracked. For weeks she had carried the burden of betrayal and loss like a secret she had to guard. But now, under the gentle steadiness of David's gaze and the guileless honesty of Sophie's plea, she found herself speaking aloud the truth she had buried. "My fiancé, I thought we were building a life together, but he took everything. Our savings, my trust. And when I left, there was nothing left for me. I've been," she broke off, swallowing hard. "I've been trying to figure out what's next." David's eyes softened with recognition. "I know something about that," he said quietly. "Losing someone. Having the ground pulled out from under you." He glanced down at Sophie, who was humming softly, oblivious to the gravity of their exchange. Sometimes recovery means accepting help, even when pride tells us we should handle it alone. "What are you suggesting?" Elena asked cautiously. David extended a hand toward her, his gesture calm and deliberate. "I'm suggesting that Sophie might be right about wishes finding each other. Come home with us tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what practical help might look like. You don't have to make any decisions beyond that." Elena looked at him, then at Sophie, whose face shone with anticipation. This child who had been brave enough to ask for a mommy, who believed so fiercely in wishes, seemed to see something Elena hadn't dared to imagine for herself. "Okay," she whispered finally. "Yes, thank you." 6 months later, Elena could scarcely recognize the woman she had been that winter evening. The fragile, uncertain girl sitting at the bus stop had been transformed, piece by piece, by the small mercies of daily life with David and Sophie. At first, it had been tentative. Nights spent on the guest bed, mornings filled with awkward gratitude, dinners where conversation hovered politely at the surface. But slowly, trust wove itself through the silence. David offered her a position at his architectural firm, first as an assistant, then with increasing responsibilities as her skill became apparent. She accepted, tentative but determined, finding purpose in tasks that reminded her she was capable, valued. Sophie, of course, had no hesitation. She folded Elena into her world instantly, declaring her place at tea parties, demanding her participation in bedtime stories, slipping her small hand into Elena's with a certainty that made the older woman's heart ache with both joy and longing. It was Sophie, too, who noticed before anyone else. One spring evening, they had gathered for a movie night on the couch. Sophie, nestled between them, had fallen asleep, her tiny head resting against Elena's shoulder. David's arm brushed Elena's, and neither of them moved away. In the quiet glow of the television, he turned to her. "I love you," he said simply, the words carrying the weight of patience and truth. Elena's breath caught. "David," he smiled faintly. "You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." But she did say it back, because it had grown inside her slowly, like a seed watered by kindness and trust until it bloomed undeniable. "I love you, too." Later, when she recounted it to Sophie, the little girl only grinned knowingly. "I told you, wishes find each other." The following winter, They stood together in a sunlit church. Family and friends gathered around them. Elena wore white. David looked at her with awe, and Sophie walked proudly down the aisle as flower girl and self-declared official, sprinkling petals with one hand and holding a clipboard with the other. She insisted she should make us official, David whispered to Elena with a chuckle, watching Sophie's serious concentration. She's not wrong, Elena whispered back, eyes shining. As they exchanged vows, Elena's gaze flicked to Sophie, who beamed with unfiltered pride. And in that moment, Elena marveled at how a single child's simple question, "Can you be my mommy?" had rewritten 3 lives. What had begun as loss and loneliness had been remade into something whole, something chosen, something rooted in love. Sometimes wishes really did know where to find the hearts that needed them most.